Okay, we're gonna get everything going here, folks. We're just standing by for a news conference in Dallas, Texas, where a deadly shooting has taken place at an ICE facility. We're told um, by people there that this is a very nondescript facility. This is not where detainees are held. They believe this is where the detainees are processed after they are arrested. The report is that a sniper style shooter on the roof of a nearby government building opened fire uh, on that building, killing two detainees and hurting one other detainee in the shooting. Now, the reports is that the sniper has taken their own life. There has been a massive law enforcement presence to this. Obviously, we are standing by for a news conference that is set to take place any moment now, as we are waiting to hear from authorities on what they know and what they don't know at this time. Going through what we do know, the Fox station in Dallas was told that the shooter was on the roof of a law firm building behind the ICE facility and fired into an unmarked van transporting detainees. Uh, they do believe that they know the identity of this shooter, but they're not providing any other information at this time. Again, we are standing by for a live news conference from authorities following this shooting, as we waiting to see what has actually happened here in Dallas. Again, right now the information is that two detainees were shot and killed. Another was wounded. They were apparently in an ICE van when a sniper nearby opened fire on that van. This, according to sources reporting to the Fox station in Dallas, as to what happened there. Uh, Obviously, too soon to suggest any type of specific motive or target, but clearly there are indications here that this was some type of intentional attack, a planned attack, um, and now it's just a matter of determining exactly who this was. Sources are saying that law enforcement does believe they know the identity of the shooter, who again has reportedly taken their own life after opening fire. Uh, Dallas police and Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson are set to hold this news conference shortly at any moment. We have been standing by for some time now. We're hoping that this will get underway here shortly. But again, the headline is that sources with law enforcement are telling local affiliates in Dallas that a suspect opened fire on an ICE van at this facility from a roof, obviously sniper style, and opened fire on this van, killing two detainees and injuring one other detainee. We have no information that any officers were injured in this shooting, uh, but obviously we're still waiting for more information from the FBI and local law enforcement. Uh, right now, the only official statement from local police in Dallas was that the suspect opened fire from a nearby building. Two people were taken to the hospital with gunshot wounds, and a third victim died at the scene. The suspect is confirmed to be dead. Um, Unfortunately, all of this is being politicized immediately. Without knowing any information, the vice president has called this another obsessive attack on law enforcement and that it must stop. Um, Now that's unfortunate because right now it appears the only people injured in this shooting were detainees. So we don't know whether law enforcement was the target in this shooting. We don't know officially if it's detainees, but it was only detainees, according to law enforcement, that were shot. Um, but again, Republicans, including Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who I believe is running for Senate, and Vice President J.D. Vance are already calling this a targeted attack on ICE officials. There is no confirmation of that. At this time, law enforcement is saying ICE officials were not injured in this shooting, but two detainees were killed and one other was seriously injured. So it's very unfortunate, and that is quickly going on. Now, I will say, there are the Republicans, including Senator Ted Cruz, who are not jumping to that conclusion, as well as, I believe, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem did not jump to that conclusion as well, in fact, stressing that they don't know a motive yet. That is far more responsible than what the Vice President and Attorney General Ken Paxton are saying, because right now, the only people injured were not ICE officers, but detainees, which would suggest that detainees were the actual target of the shooting, not the officers. Of course, we don't know that yet. What we know is it was just detainees that were wounded and killed in this targeted shooting by a sniper. Again, the sniper took their own life, according to law enforcement. There are sources saying that they already know the identity of the shooter, the deceased shooter, but are not saying anything else at this time. Now, if you have any questions or comments about this, feel free to share them in the comment. We're going to do our best to monitor the chat here as we are awaiting this news conference to get underway, hoping that it may be happening soon here, because it looks like they're going to try and move the podium under an awning there to get out of the heavy rain that they're dealing with in Dallas right now. But hopefully that would be a sign that this is going to get going sooner rather than later. The one ICE detainee that survived the shooting is reportedly in critical condition right now at a Dallas hospital. Now, this shooting took place just after 6:30 this morning at the ICE facility, so about 3.5 hours ago. Again, the identity of the shooter has not been released, but they are reportedly dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. 2 detainees were killed, a third, again, in critical condition. At this time, no ICE officers or any other government employees have been reported to have been injured in this attack. So we don't know exactly what the motive is. Obviously, if this was a targeted attack, by all accounts, they were targeting detainees, not officers. The shooting apparently happened while these individuals, the victims, were in a van, not necessarily out in the open. So theoretically, they may have been in the back of the van while the officers were in the front cabin. Governor Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, just said that Texas fully supports ICE. This assassination will not slow our arrest, detention, and deportation of illegal immigrants. Obviously making it sound like that this was an assassination attempt on officers, which so far it does not appear to be the case. If anyone was assassinated here, it was ICE detainees. So again, everybody quickly jumping to the idea that this was a targeted attack on law enforcement. There is no evidence of that. The only people that were shot by this apparent sniper, who obviously was targeting somebody, were detainees. 2 detainees killed, 1 critically injured, and now undergoing treatment at a hospital. So it's extremely unfortunate that we have many on the right in positions of leadership already calling this an attack on ICE officers. So far, there is no evidence that is the case, because the only individuals wounded were the detainees. And if this did in fact happen while the detainees and officers were in a van, that would be where the detainees are isolated, and you could ensure that you don't hit any officers if you're acting as a sniper from a roof on a building nearby this facility. Now, again, this ICE facility in Dallas is not where detainees are held. It appears that this may be where detainees are processed once they're taken into custody. So, again, no evidence right now that this was an attack on ICE officers, as it appears that the detainees were the ones that were shot and killed and critically wounded at a time when they would not have been near the ICE officers. We're monitoring reports coming out of Dallas from multiple news organizations, local and national. Again, the Fox station in Dallas, Fox 4, is reporting that sources have told them that 2 ICE detainees were died. A third is now in critical condition. We're getting a response now from Senator John Cornyn. Texas Senator John Cornyn calls what happened, horrific. I am keeping everyone impacted in my prayers. My staff have been in touch with local and federal officials in Dallas, and we will make sure all resources are brought to bear. Again, so here's another Republican who is not jumping to any conclusions. Unfortunately, it appears the Attorney General of Texas, who I believe is running for Senate, and Vice President J.D. Vance have already called this an attack on officers. That is not known. I cannot stress that enough, because it appears that, according to sources reporting to Fox in Dallas, the target was an ICE detention van. And so it's possible that they carried out this attack when detainees would have been in the back of a van while the officers were separated from them in the front cabin. Again, it appears that this was a sniper-like attack from an individual on a rooftop across from the detention facility, or not detention facility, but ICE facility, where presumably these detainees would have been processed or just been processed before the shooting around 6:30 this morning. Just going to make sure that we're getting our audio here appropriately. Keep an eye on that for you here, but it appears that this news conference may be getting underway here relatively soon, as they're getting their mic checks in order, and we are expected to hear from local law enforcement, local leaders. I would presume that the FBI is on scene already in Dallas, assisting with local and state officials in this this shooting outside an ICE detention facility. Don't believe we're getting appropriate audio from this feed, so if that is not fixed before it begins, I do apologize. We'll try and get the best audio that we can for you here. But it looks like they're going to get started here sooner rather than later. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Obviously, reports of the shooting have been out there for hours now, but I believe this is going to be our first official news conference. It's been a little over 3.5 hours since the shooting took place in Dallas. Hopefully, there has been a little bit of information that has made its way out since then that law enforcement will be able to share. Again, a shooter on the roof of a law firm building behind a Dallas ICE facility opened fire on an unmarked van with an ATF driver. This is according to sources reporting to Fox 4 in Dallas. The van was bringing detainees into the facility, presumably for processing, because according to reports, this is not an area in which detainees are held awaiting hearings or deportation. Investigators believe they know the identity of the shooter, but they're still working to confirm that and verify anything before releasing his name to the public. So we may or may not get that at this news conference, is what it appears to be, as we continue to wait for additional information in the matter. Again, the only people injured or killed were detainees, not any ICE agents, not any federal law enforcement or officers of any kind were injured in this attack. So, unfortunately, we're already seeing statements made by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, Vice President J.D. Vance, calling this another attack on law enforcement. That may not be the case. That may not be the case, because no officers, no federal employees were reportedly injured, but 2 detainees were killed and another critically wounded. So the facts that we know, at least so far, don't support the theory that this was an attack on law enforcement. By all accounts, it may be quite the opposite, but we will see what law enforcement says about that, because obviously when you have somebody shooting from a distance using a high accuracy weapon like that, it's clear that they're targeting somebody. They're not just spraying bullets in a direction that they want to kill people. And it seems that they were intentionally not targeting federal agents in this case. But again, we will see what law enforcement says about that. So again, we're getting very politicized statements from the right so far, calling this an attack on law enforcement. I will say, though, many Republicans are not jumping to that conclusion. Senators Ted Cruz and John Cornyn of Texas both not laying this at the hands of an attack on law enforcement, because the facts simply don't support that right now. This may have been a targeted attack on detainees. Again, we're monitoring this. They've moved the position of the news conference to get officials out of the rain as the rain continues to come down in Dallas right now. But they've repositioned their news conference. They've gotten their mic checks. I'm not sure how good our audio is going to be. Hopefully that gets fixed here before it begins. But we should still be able to hear something as this takes place. Nearby where this sniper opened fire on what was reportedly a ATF driver that was bringing detainees to an ICE facility, presumably for processing. We do expect to hear from the Dallas police chief as well as Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson. I would not be surprised to hear from state authorities as well as the FBI. It really just depends on what information they're willing to provide at this point, as we are expecting at least confirmation that two detainees were killed, another is critically wounded, and that these victims were all detainees to be processed by ICE. The shooting happening at 6:30 local time, Central Time here in the U.S. in Dallas. So over 3.5 hours ago. This, I believe, will be our first official news conference since the shooting took place. Again, the shooter opening fire from a nearby rooftop on the van has reportedly taken their own life before any potential of being taken into custody. So it appears that the shooter, unlike what happened in Utah with Charlie Kirk, had little to no expectation of leaving the scene of the crime alive or to be taken into custody. Again, if you have any questions, comments, feel free to share them in the chat right now. We're going to continue to monitor this, as this is really where we're going to get our only verifiable information here for the foreseeable future. But what we do have coming out, there has been confirmation that two detainees were killed, another critically wounded. Sources telling the local Fox station that the sniper was killed, or took their own life, rather. And that also it appears that they were on the roof of a law firm building behind the ICE facility, and they opened fire not on the facility, but an unmarked van outside where an ATF driver was bringing the detainees to the facility. Now, what we don't know is how many detainees were in the van. All we know is that two were killed, and one is now in critical condition at a nearby hospital in Dallas. Sources telling Fox 4 that they believe they have the identity of the shooter. As of about 45 minutes ago, they were still working to get confirmation on the identity that they have. And so it is quite possible they will not be releasing that name at this first news conference. However, we don't know. The news conference is obviously running late, as is often the case. And that may be because they're working to confirm as much as they can get out to the public as quickly as possible, for a various number of reasons. Obviously, you want to quell any fears. You want to put down any rumors that may be simply untrue about this situation. That is obviously critical in times like this, especially in these polarizing times. As we said, Vice President J.D. Vance, the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, already calling this an attack on law enforcement. And so far, that does not appear to be the case. This appears to be a possible attack on ICE detainees and not law enforcement. So most Republicans, I will say, that represent this area have not taken the bait on that, have not called this an attack on law enforcement, jumping to any conclusions, because it may turn out that that was not the motive of the shooter here, as it appears that they took steps not to hit any law enforcement officers. What we don't know at this time is we don't know if there was ever any fire returned at the shooter, or if there was any confrontation with the shooter at all before they took their life. Clearly, somebody opening fire from a rooftop at 6:30 in the morning obviously knew uh, when a time would be to shoot people, in this case detainees. So clear planning took place in this. Um, Now, local law enforcement is also reporting that there was recently a bomb threat at this facility. This would have been nearly a month ago, when a individual came up to the office and claimed to have a detonator on his wrist. Uh, that individual was taken into custody and charged with making terroristic threats. No information as to what happened to that individual, if they're still in custody. No indication that that has anything to do with what happened today. Um, but again, hopefully we'll get some more information here very shortly from law enforcement. Still getting some mic checks, and I'm not sure I'm getting the correct audio here, but we will do the best we can with that. The flow of information clearly slowing down at this point as law enforcement is getting ready for this news conference. Again, we're monitoring multiple sources in that area, both local and national sources. Homeland Security has confirmed that no ICE agents were injured in this shooting. No ICE agents injured in the shooting. Sources were telling the local Fox affiliate that an ATF agent was the one that was driving the van, and that they were not hurt as well. It appears the only ones killed or wounded in the shooting appear to be detainees that were being brought to this facility. Two patients, one was pronounced dead at the scene. Two shooting victims were taken to Parkland Hospital in Dallas. One has died from their injuries. A third is reportedly in critical condition. Obviously, if Parkland sounds familiar, that is the facility that President Kennedy was taken after he was shot in Dallas in 1963. It looks like we do have authorities now coming to the podium here, so we will be taking you to that here shortly, as this news conference is hopefully getting underway now in Dallas. It does appear that we do have local, state authorities there, as well as federal authorities. Not sure who all we're going to be hearing from at this time. But again, it appears that we're going to be hearing from the mayor of Dallas, as well as local police, and likely state and federal law enforcement as well. And here we go.
All right. Let me just start off by saying that I'm a person who believes very, very strongly in the power of prayer, and that prayer changes things. And so I'm going to ask everyone, please join me in praying for the families, folks who lost their lives today. Pray for the speedy recovery for those who are hurt and injured in what happened today. But maybe even more city that needs prayer. So I'm going to ask you all to join me also in praying for this city, that we can come together at a time like this, and that we can be there for one another the way we always have in times like this. Support one another, help us all get through this very difficult time, not just in our city, but in our country. And that's why I'd ask you to pray for our nation. There's a lot going on right now. But I said before, and I'll say it again, I believe in the power of prayer to change things. And it can change the hearts of people. It can change this country. It can change this city. So please pray for everyone who is affected by today's tragedy. I also want to say thank you to the Dallas Police Department, and say thank you to the Dallas Sheriff's Department, Dallas County Sheriff's Department, Texas Department of Public Safety, and all of our various federal law enforcement partners who acted so quickly today to make sure that today's tragedy wasn't worse than what it was. So on behalf of the city of Dallas, I want to say thank you to all of you. And you're going to hear from some of those folks later, but I want to let you know that we appreciate what you all do, not just today, but every day, to help keep us all safe. And lastly, and this is really important, I would ask all of the city of Dallas residents who can hear me right now, let's be patient, let's remain calm, and let's let our law enforcement partners, our police department, do their job. This is an active investigation. There's still a lot of unanswered questions, and I want to encourage all of you to exercise a little bit of restraint and allow them to do their job to help make sure this continues to be a safe city, and that they can help us figure out what happened here today. But with that, I want to say, again, thank you to all the folks who came out this morning from our law enforcement community. I'll turn it over to our police chief, Daniel Como, to speak a little bit more directly to the investigation itself. And with that, Chief Como, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Today at approximately 6:40 a.m., we received a assist the officer call. We responded to the call, got to the scene, and we later learned that we had 4 individuals that were shot, 2 of them deceased, including the shooter. The DPD was able to locate the shooter, who was deceased. We're going to be working this investigation shoulder to shoulder with our federal partners. The FBI is on scene, and right now I'm going to introduce you to the SAC of the Dallas Field Division, FBI Joe Rumrock.
Yeah, good morning. My name's Joe Rothrock. I'm the Special Agent in charge of the Dallas FBI Field Office. I want to first start by thanking our partners in local law enforcement, specifically the Dallas Police Department, for their quick and timely response. I can confirm at this time that the FBI is investigating this incident as an act of targeted violence. It is unfortunately just the most recent example we've seen of targeted violence, to include here in North Texas, where back on July 4th, we saw a coordinated attack carried out against an immigration detention center in Alvarado, Texas. What I can also share with you is that early evidence that we've seen from rounds that were found near the suspected shooter contain messages that are anti-ICE in nature. Again, this is just the most recent example of this type of attack. This will be a whole of government response. There will be no resource not utilized to bring all those individuals who are responsible to bring them to justice and to hold them accountable. While we're not releasing identities of any victims at this time, what I can confirm for you is no members of law enforcement were hurt during this attack. If any member of the public has information that would help the FBI's investigation, I would ask that you please report that to 1-800-CALL-FBI. Again, any piece of information will be helpful, but this will be an ongoing investigation between us, a number of federal partners, and our local partners, again, to ensure that anyone responsible is held accountable. With that, I will turn it over to my counterpart from the ICE Enforcement and Removal Office.
Good morning. My name is Joshua Johnson. I'm the acting field office director for ICE Dallas. I'll be brief with my comments, but I do want to start off by saying thank you to the Dallas Police Department, Dallas FBI, HSI, CBP, ATF, and virtually every law enforcement officer in North Texas for your support. This is the second time I've had to stand in front of you and talk about a shooter at one of my facilities, and I think that the takeaway from all of this is that the rhetoric has to stop. There are people out there who are seeing what is being placed online, and they're coming and they're doing acts of violence against ICE employees. So that's kind of all I have for today, is that it's just got to stop. It's dangerous, and people are losing their lives. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate it. Again, thank you all so much. As it was said here today, if you do have any information, reach out to 1-800-CALL-FBI. Thank you. Thank you.
This needs to stop. Violence is wrong. Politically motivated violence is wrong. It was 2 weeks ago today that we saw a political assassination in Utah that tore the heart out of much of this country. This is the third shooting in Texas directed at ICE or CBP. This must stop. To every politician who is using rhetoric demonizing ICE and demonizing CBP, stop. To every politician demanding that ICE agents be doxxed and calling for people to go after their families, stop. This has very real consequences. Look, in America, we disagree, that's fine, that's the democratic process, but your political opponents are not Nazis. We need to learn to work together without demonizing each other, without attacking each other, and I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to the brave men and women of law enforcement. I want to say thank you to the brave men and women of ICE and CBP and everyone who puts their lives on the line to keep us safe. The divisive rhetoric tragically has real consequences. I hope that every one of us will pray, number one, for the safety of law enforcement that are risking their lives to keep us safe. Number two, for the health of those who were shot and injured today. We still don't know the full details of who was injured, but for the families also of the victims of this shooting. Violence has no place. It is wrong. And we should come together. If we want to have a debate about immigration policies, we can do so in the halls of Congress without demonizing each other, and especially without demonizing the men and women who every day put on a badge and go risk their lives to keep us safe. And we should not be putting language out there that inspires madmen to commit evil crimes. Our prayers are with the men and women of law enforcement, and we ought to come together and have some decency across the political aisle to say this violence is wrong and it needs to stop.
Senator, have you been told that immigrant detainees were the victims of today's shooting?
My understanding is the details of who the victims are still being ascertained, so I don't want to go ahead of law enforcement releasing these details. What they have said is that no law enforcement was injured, and so that's a natural inference, but I don't know the details.
Special Agent, can you talk a little bit about some of the evidence you mentioned earlier? Just for clarity, I think there's going to be a lot of questions. Our understanding is that some of the shell casings had specific writing that was relevant to the voting. Give us more information.
So I'm not going to go into any more details at this time. We will come back to you when we have more details to share. Again, our goal here will be transparency as those details become available, but we are still in the early stages of an investigation. Information is still coming in. When we have more details, we will come back to this group. I'm not going to be identifying victims at this time. The only thing I will confirm at this time is no law enforcement was injured. Certainly you can respect law enforcement's need to make notifications. At this point in time, we're not going to take any additional questions from law enforcement. Again, I'd ask for you to respect the fact that this is an ongoing investigation, and as more details come available...
We're not asking for the names of the victims.
I understand.
General sense
I will,
if the victims are the detainees.
The only thing I can say right now is no law enforcement was injured this morning as part of the attack. I won't be taking any more questions, neither will law enforcement this time. We'll come back to you later today or in the coming days when we have additional information. Thank you for your time.
Thank you a lot. Thanks a lot.
Okay, well, that was slightly unexpected. So not only did they not want to say that detainees were shot, although I believe local police were the ones that confirmed that publicly, but state and federal authorities indicated that there was evidence that this was an attack on ICE officers, although none were injured in the attack, which was apparently some type of sniper-style attack. Instead, there were 2 detainees that were killed, another one critically injured. None of that confirmed in this news conference. Give me a moment as I go back and check some of our sources, but I believe that that was an official statement from Dallas police. FBI sources reported that. I apologize. FBI sources are the ones that confirmed FBI sources, according to Fox 4 in Dallas, confirmed, and other news organizations have confirmed that as well, both local and national, that the only victims in this shooting were detainees. But law enforcement would not confirm that. They would only confirm that no government officials were injured. So obviously that would assume that the only victims were detainees, but they wouldn't confirm that. Instead, the only new information that they did confirm was that there was apparently, they're calling this targeted violence, and are not they're saying that there was evidence on the fragments, which is kind of been the motive of several solo shooters, to have messages on their cartridges or other pieces of evidence, and they claim that those had anti-ICE messages on them. So either they didn't say what the messages were, and so we'll take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, because obviously there were messages in the Charlie Kirk assassination that turned out not to be what people said they were in the beginning. There were sources in the law enforcement that said they were indicating a trans motive behind the shooting, and when new details came out, it turned out that was not the case. So we will see what that exactly means, because it appears that ICE and other federal agents were not injured. Were they the target of the shooting? That's what they're insinuating, but the evidence says otherwise, unless they simply didn't know who they were shooting at, because according to sources, they fired into a van, but one would assume that detainees are in the back of the van and agents are in the front of the van. But again, these are details we just don't have right now. So again, the headline of the hour is sources at the FBI have said that it was only detainees that were shot, injured, and killed. But on the record, the FBI and other law enforcement agencies will not say that. They will simply only say no government agents were injured. So a bit unusual. There could be an explanation for why they won't confirm that, because there could be that could be an easy way for family that hasn't been notified that their loved one is dead, and that may some law enforcement may feel confirming it was detainees might be too specific. They also didn't say if there were other detainees in that van that weren't wounded. So it's a bit unusual not to provide that information, especially when law enforcement knows that it's out there. It's been confirmed by multiple sources, multiple news agencies for hours now. So that to me, that was the one bit of unusual information that they held back. They also provided no timeline. They provided no other information about the chain of events, which was quite unusual because much of that wouldn't impact an investigation. They also gave no indication of whether or not anyone may have aided or supported this shooter. There really was nothing in that news conference, to be honest. The only new piece of information was the FBI called it targeted violence, and that there was evidence found at the scene of anti-ICE messages. However, if this was a targeted shooting, as is what appears to be the case of a sniper on the rooftop of a building nearby, it would seem that if their motive was against ICE, they shot all of the wrong people. They shot detainees. They didn't shoot agents. So a lot of questions. I really don't want to speculate too much, but unfortunately, this lack of information is only going to fuel the rhetoric that they also pleaded with people not to engage in. And unfortunately, you can plead all you want. Your intentions can be as pure as hell, but too many people, too many keyboard warriors who feel empowered by their limited anonymity online are certainly not going to listen to that. My only message to you as a journalist is don't take the bait. And unfortunately, in this day and age, don't listen to your leaders. I hate to say that. It shouldn't be that way. In this case, people like Senator Ted Cruz, Senator John Cornyn, and others have been speaking publicly appropriately. And I want to make that clear. But others, Governor Greg Abbott, Attorney General Ken Paxton, Vice President J.D. Vance, are saying inflammatory statements already that we don't know to be the case. And so either they know something we don't know and they're telling something else they probably shouldn't for political reasons, or as is often the case nowadays, they're talking out of their ass. And I really hate to say that about our leaders, but we've just seen too much evidence over it that the jumping to conclusions, the assigning blame on people that have nothing to do with this. But again, regardless of the motive, whether it was against ICE, not against ICE, we don't know. This shows you that people, regardless of their political views, regardless of their feelings on any issue, are capable of violence, deadly violence. And it's nothing new. A lot of people are drawing parallels to the 60s, and they're right. People were being told to hate minorities. That blacks were coming for their way of life. And that's what fueled a lot of the hatred of the 1960s. And so people with no history of violence, as was the case in the Charlie Kirk assassination, something happens that leads them to do something like this. And it appears that that's what has happened again here. But what we don't know is we don't know the actual motive. The last time we went down this road and found anti something or pro something messages on cartridges, it turned out that that wasn't the actual motive. It was apparently an assassin's version of trolling, which the fact that that's a thing makes me sick. Trolling's bad enough online when it's just words. Trolling on bullets, that's a level of psychosis I don't ever want to understand, to be honest. But it doesn't matter. 2 people are dead, a gunman has taken their own life, and another person is critically injured. And what I find unfortunate was, and maybe this is, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe this is because they didn't identify them as detainees, which I still don't understand that. Maybe it's because of the notification process. I'll give them that. But no compassion was shown and no responsibility was taken. And I think that's something that I want to see out of law enforcement and out of our leaders, is whether it's the president, whether it's the director of Homeland Security, whether it's the acting director of ICE, there needs to be responsibility taken, because these persons, these detainees, are suspects. They are in federal custody. And federal custody doesn't just mean you lock them up. Federal custody means you're responsible for their safety. So that's a question that needs to be asked and needs to be focused on, is what is being done about the safety of those that are in custody. And not just when it comes to violence like this, because obviously this is an extremely rare incident. It's happening far too often, of course, but this is not commonplace. It also means that the treatment of detainees while in custody. And obviously there have been reports across the country of horrid treatment of not only detainees, but others that have been placed in special holding facilities. Alligator Alcatraz is the other example that many use. I hope that discussion happens as well, because those injured and killed in this, they are the responsibility of law enforcement. The authorities that had them in custody were responsible for their safety, and they failed. So there needs to be a very strong understanding of what that entails moving forward. I'd love to hear what you all think. I know we don't have a lot of people here in the chat, and that's fine. I know people are exhausted. I am too. This is a lot, and it's hard to stomach it when you know that it's probably going to keep happening. This is the world we live in now. Those that are inflaming the situation are certainly not going to stop. I have a hard time believing that there's anybody who engages in disgusting rhetoric, whether they're in a position of power or not, are going to stop, because they feel that it is beneficial either to themselves or to their goals. So again, no confirmation from law enforcement that the victims are detainees. However, that has been confirmed by multiple sources from multiple news agencies. Again, I think it's, on the surface, it's abhorrent that they couldn't even acknowledge that. I will say, in the benefit of the doubt world, that it's very possible that they felt they couldn't do that because it may have identified the victims before all appropriate parties, family and such, have been formally notified. I understand that. And I think that they could have explained that. I think if that was the reason, that should have been explained. So all in all, this was a pointless news conference. The only real information that came out of it was a bunch of leaders urging people to cool the rhetoric. But the fact that they provided nothing and explained, and didn't even explain why they're providing nothing, that doesn't make it any better. In fact, I think they made it worse, because the one bit of new information was what you see on the screen here, was anti-ICE messages on the fragments. There was no stressing that it's too early to suggest a motive from that. And like in the Charlie Kirk assassination, many people jumped to conclusions, and that may be happening again now. Now, maybe it does come out that this person was targeting agents and somehow missed all of them, or one of, at least the one that we know was on the scene, and simply hit a bunch of detainees. That doesn't seem to jive with a sniper-like attack. So maybe it wasn't a sniper rifle. Maybe it was more bullets than we know. None of that was explained. And I think a lot of that could have been explained without jeopardizing the investigation and without jeopardizing anybody's privacy while they're notifying the victims' families. So if this news conference was simply called to just cool the rhetoric, I think it failed miserably. And I don't want to go on Twitter to find out because I know that that's true. The only thing I can do with my obviously limited voice is urge you not to take the bait. Just because you see something online doesn't make it true. And maybe it's worth digging around a little bit before you hit that share button. This is a time where we need reputable news sources more than ever, and we have them. But fewer people are listening and reading and watching them than ever before. We're turning to non-traditional sources that have no accountability, no dedication to the facts. They simply hit share. Or in some cases, flat out make it up. I know that's not a very upbeat thing to say, but I think that's where we're at. So again, no real new information coming out of this news conference. A bunch of calls to cool the rhetoric while doing nothing to answer any questions about what happened, which would be the best thing they could do to help cool the rhetoric. If they're going to insinuate that this was targeting ICE agents, then they should also explain why ICE agents weren't hit and only detainees were hit. Was it simply because the shooter acted too indiscriminately, or what? We don't know. I don't think there's a whole lot else to say, unfortunately, so I think maybe we'll wrap it there. But I would say that news conference was a waste of time. They provided nothing. In fact, they provided far less than we already know. They provided nothing that will cool the rhetoric, so to speak, that they said that they want to cool. They didn't provide any explanation for how they can insinuate that this was an anti-ICE attack and agents were the only ones not injured. I think that's a fair question that they refuse to answer. And there could absolutely be an explanation for that. But it's their responsibility to provide one if they're going to throw that crap out there, because what they just did with that is they just threw blood in the water. Because people are going to see evidence of anti-ICE right there. Evidence of anti-ICE messages on fragments is what they said. That's not a motive. We learned that with the Charlie Kirk assassination. So to put that out there and then not explain anything is just going to make it worse. And it doesn't matter if they come out later and say, well, it turns out A, B, and C. It's already out there. That was a horrendous news conference, the more I sit here and think about it. For lack of a better term, I think a term I use, unfortunately, too often behind the scenes in my days was that was a dog shit news conference. Because there's nothing out of that you want to pick up. Republicans at the news conference talked about cooling the rhetoric, absolutely true, but then provided nothing to cool that rhetoric and nothing to counter what other Republicans in power, namely the governor of Texas, the attorney general of Texas, and the vice president of the United States have already said about the motive. You can tell I'm getting angry. And my anger is with the lack of information. More than anything, the public needs information as soon as possible to cool the rhetoric. It does not need to be filtered to go with a certain agenda. And here's my issue with that. I have a hard time believing that if it was law enforcement agents that were killed and wounded in this shooting, that they wouldn't have told us that by now. But for some reason, they have opted not to tell us that, in fact, it was detainees that were shot and killed, not agents. The only explanation I have for that, in my experience, is because it may be too much information before they notify next of kin. But when that's the case, you say that. You say that. You provide the reasonable explanation. And that's why I have a deep concern that that is not the reason why. They wanted to focus more on the violence in general and permeate the causes. Now, it may absolutely come out that this person was targeting ICE and simply was a terrible shot and hit everybody not associated with ICE. That absolutely may have happened. But to come out and say that, and to provide no information at all about the victims, wow. I guess I'm just flabbergasted. I'll go back to what I said just a moment ago. People in power, from the president to other elected officials to those in charge of law enforcement, all the way down to the agents who were there when the shooting happened, all of them have a responsibility to the safety of those in their custody. These detainees were in the custody of federal law enforcement. This is a failure of federal law enforcement. That's one thing to me that stands out over what happened in Utah. What happened in Utah was a failure of private security. And Charlie Kirk had plenty of private security, but there's only so much private security can do. Charlie Kirk put himself out there. He knew he would always be in danger. He accepted that. And, you know, regardless of what you think about him, that's admirable. This is different. This is law enforcement failing to do their job. Now, of course, you can't have all kinds of law enforcement, but, you know, I give you an example. I'm here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and we had a federal building that was quite old. And so people would have their hearings in federal court. And we had terrorists tried in this court. We infamously had the smiley face mailbox bomber was tried here in Cedar Rapids in the early 2000s, 2002, I believe. Or no, was it? I think maybe it was before 9/11. I honestly don't remember, but it was early 2000s. We had drug running mass murderers tried here. And so what they would do was, after their hearing, they would pull a van up right to a door and they would take them in and out and then drive them in the van to the Lynn County Jail. And at the Lynn County Jail, they pulled into a garage. So these people were seen in public for 3 seconds at best. Now, I don't know what the situation was at this facility. And obviously the problem is that we're detaining so many people that they're not going through traditional law enforcement where security is tight. But when the new federal building was built after the flood here in Cedar Rapids, they got rid of the perp walk. They put them indoors. It all happens in an underground garage. We never see the individuals. Now, but sources are telling local affiliates in Dallas that this was an unmarked vehicle. So the only way this individual knew for certain he was shooting at an ICE vehicle or at agents was if he was casing it for a while. But again, there are 2 people dead and a third fighting for their life that were the responsibility of federal law enforcement. This was not somebody controversial out in the open. These were people that freedom was taken away for law enforcement reasons, and as a result, their safety and well-being is the responsibility of law enforcement. Why did that fail? And if this was a targeted attack on ICE agents, why were they the only victims? There may genuinely be an explanation for that, but with the lack of information, I don't see how you cool the rhetoric, because you just provided evidence that's going to fire up the side that says law enforcement is under attack. And then you provided no explanation that's going to fire up the other side that said, well, then why is it only the poor detainees that are the victims? I truly hope we get all that. My fear is we're only going to get that through background information and from sources. Thank goodness for journalists, by the way. But with the track record of our current administration, I have very little faith that we will get a true story. We will rather get a filtered story. Because this shooting may or may not fit their narrative that law enforcement is under attack. That's what they're claiming. And those that are claiming it have little to do, if anything, with the actual investigation and collection of the facts. So I have no faith, based on their track record, that what they're telling us is the truth. I do believe, with the help of journalists and good people in law enforcement, we will get to the truth. But like in the Charlie Kirk shooting and so many other acts of violence, it's going to be too little and too late. The lines in the sand have already been drawn online. The rhetoric has already started. The blame is already being pointed. And at this point in time, without a motive, the only blame rests in the hands of law enforcement, because they failed these detainees. And while all this crap is being spewed all over the country, I genuinely hope the people on the ground in Dallas and other facilities will have a genuine and honest review of their security practices, because it's easy for those. I fully understand when you're doing mass incarceration like this, regardless of what you think about it, it's being done in a way so fast and so ramped up, it's hard to believe that there is good security for these detainees. Well, for the handful of you that are still here, I apologize for my ranting. It doesn't seem like anybody really wants to chat, so I think we'll wrap this up here. But again, here's the information we have. At 6:30 this morning, somebody opened fire from a rooftop outside an ICE facility. We do not believe this is a detention facility. It may have been a processing facility. Shooting around 6:30 this morning left 2 detainees dead, another critically injured. The shooter, or sniper, or whatever you want to call them, allegedly took their own life before being taken into custody. We don't know if they were confronted by law enforcement. We don't know if any fire was exchanged first. We don't know. Sources are also saying the shooting took place outside the facility, targeting a van, an unmarked van that was driven reportedly by an ATF agent. So we don't even know if there were any ICE officials out there. There may have been. I would suspect that there was. But again, no government officials, no government agents were wounded or killed in this attack, just detainees. Now, in that news conference, they said evidence of anti-ICE messages were found on fragments or other pieces of evidence at the scene, but they didn't elaborate. And so we will see what, if anything, that means. So we'll wrap it up there. I'll certainly think about making a video if we get any updates. We'll see what we find out by news time tonight. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. I hope you enjoy these discussions, and I would like them to be more of a discussion rather than just me trying to fill time. So if you want to see more of that, please like the video. Please subscribe. We are so tantalizingly close to hitting our milestone of 1,000 subscribers, and we really want to hit that. It would mean a lot, and I would appreciate any help that any of you can provide. So thank you for joining us. We'll go ahead and wrap it up there, and hopefully we'll get some better information here in the very near future.